Hey, theater writers and lovers. I'm your host, Noam Waterpearl, and you are listening to The Latest Draft. Today's episode features The Ballad of Elisa Lam, book and lyrics by Garrett Bell, with music by Charlie Romano. Elisa Lam was a student from Vancouver who disappeared in January 2013 during her stay at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Her body was found 3 weeks later, but the mystery of her death has never been solved. Grab your playbill, take your seats, because the show starts right now.
Gather round, fellow countrymen, and I'll sing for you a tale. Not the kind you'll sing at night or hear from Uncle Sam. Mystery and an unsolved case that'll make your judgment fail. Try to guess what man or beast would kill a little lamb. Oh, 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 oh. She had a melancholy humor, and a mystic kind of air. Never did nobody harm her, gave no cause to care. And when they came to find her, nowhere to look.
Who was it?
And who could tell us what had been and way back
What was took?
Where'd you go, poor Elisa? Do you want us to know? Will you show us, Elisa? What lesson will we learn when you go? Where'd you go, poor Elisa? What lesson will we learn when you go? It started out real normal, just a January day. Sunshine out in La La Land where she had come to stay. Everything felt normal, but something wasn't right. 'Cause somewhere in between the floors, our girl flew out of sight. Oh, 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 oh. She hopped on an elevator, but then it wouldn't close. Why she pushed its button, still nobody knows. Her family was a-calling, Elisa couldn't hear. Why did you look so scared, girl? Why did you disappear? Whoa, 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 whoa. Something seemed to spook. What could her trouble be? Was her life in danger? Was there something we can't see? Or could it be somebody? She's hiding like she's prey.
Who was it?
Checking if the coast was clear for her to run away.
There was something wrong here. Something wasn't right. Something came to hurt our girl and took her out of sight. There was something wrong. Something wasn't right. Something came to her and took her out of sight. There was something wrong.
Something wasn't Something came to her, took her out of sight.
There was something wrong.
There was something
Where'd you go, poor Elisa? Do you want us to know? Will you show us, Elisa? What lesson will we learn when you go? What lesson will we learn when you go? What lesson will we learn when you go? After Elisa got off the elevator, nobody saw her again. Her parents filed a missing persons case, but without any leads, it was as if she had vanished into thin air. So that brings us up to here, the roof of the Cecil Hotel. Why, you ask? What are you doing up here?
I'm checking the water tanks.
Why are you doing that?
Guests have been complaining about the water. It's been coming out all black and slow, so they told me to come up here and check them.
That's a good enough reason for me.
If you ask me, it's probably these old pipes. They haven't been replaced since the 20s. Who knows what kind of lead these people have been drinking.
There was something wrong here. Something wasn't right.
Probably a waste of time being up here anyways.
Something else was going on. Just hiding out of sight.
Lifting these lids is a pain in the ass. They weigh over 40 pounds.
There was something wrong here. Now the start is near.
It's not like anything or anyone can get up here on their own.
Finding only mystery.
Shit. There's a girl in here.
Nobody could have foreseen what was going to come next. The footage of Elisa in the elevator hit the internet, and overnight she went from being an obscure missing person to an absolute sensation.
Hello there, Detective Nation. It's me, America's favorite amateur sleuth. And today we are talking about the case of Elisa Lam. Her body was discovered. Now we know that she is dead. They didn't say what happened, how she got there. No, instead they buried up the details like they buried her. But ain't something strange here if you use your brains. She couldn't get up to the roof by herself. She couldn't lift the water tank lid by herself. Yet she was in the tank with the lid closed behind her. They say she wasn't followed. Do they think this was a prank? She clearly looked behind her. Now she's floating in a tank. The water lid's so heavy she can't pick it up alone. It was murder when she tripped or thrown. And now she's suddenly famous. She's suddenly famous. And now the whole world knows her name. She'll throw down in history as crime's greatest mystery. The internet won't be the same.
Hello, YouTube tribe. Today we are going to be talking about Elisa Lam. Her video has been viewed 1.6 million times already. So many people have been speculating about her death, but I want to be serious here. I've watched this video at least 20 times, and I know this girl. Why has everybody lied? Why can no one see what I see? They wanted you to hide. You were sad like me. But I know your pain when your life's a stain. They don't know when it's impossible to smile. They make you somebody famous. She's somebody famous. Remember to like and subscribe. And try not to dwell less on mental unwellness. And share if you like YouTube Tribe.
Welcome back. As always, this channel is devoted to a keen, rational examination of the facts and an honest, piercing look at the truth.
Shadows walked in behind her when the door tried to close. Clearly she's talking to somebody there. And then she froze. It's haunted, now pop quiz. Who knew that hotel is totally famous? The hotel is famous for energy sightings and grief. This isn't a mystery, just look at the history. At least that is my strong belief.
Oh, she's suddenly famous. She's suddenly famous. And now the whole world knows her name. Her death is a mystery to go down in history. A terrible plot. We want theories you got free, and our world will not be the same.
is wrong with you? This was a person. She was a person, not a character in a movie. She was a daughter. People are grieving. Her parents are grieving. She isn't a joke. This isn't a
Calm
joke.
down.
There's no law against speculating.
You all are just using her.
Whoa. Not cool, dude.
People who cared about her are trying to understand why this happened, and you are making her a joke.
Maybe you just think that because you think she's a joke.
It's not our fault that she's famous.
Excuse me, I made her famous.
People have a right to know about her.
People want to know more about her.
She's famous.
She didn't want to be famous.
That's not my fault.
What was her favorite color? You want to know more about her? What was her favorite color? Tell me that. Before any of this happened, what did she pretend was her favorite food? She'd say it was tuna neck, but what she really loved most were Oreos. Tell me more about her. Who were her best friends? What did she watch on TV when she was feeling sad? How could you be sure to make her laugh? What was her favorite dream?
You never asked me,
I should have asked you.
but you didn't.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I would have told you anyway.
Is it too late for me to ask now?
I don't dream about anything anymore.
I miss you.
I miss you too. And I miss dreaming. Lying under a sky that was bright, like the sun and the light were both weightless. As they danced on my skin, I remember how warm it had been in sunlight. And it wrapped me inside of its beams as I fell into dreams that were weightless. I miss dreams in the sky. When you're dreaming, you think you can fly high as the moon. Why are dreams over so soon? Days are warm and then they're done. People smile and then they run. Endless dreams turn into none after dark. Music, I remember music, weightless and strong. I remember a song, getting lost in the stars, lost in a sound that was ours. I miss feeling a warmth you can keep. No one sings you to sleep when you're weightless. You don't dream, you just are. Like you're watching your life from afar. No one can hear when you scream. Weightless, awake in a dream. Weightless, why do I feel weightless? Touch me if you can. Reach or touch or feel. Hold me like I'm real. Precious and soft and sad, not weightless. Weightless as the dreams I had.
I love you, Elisa.
I love you too, Dad.
We still don't know what happened to Elisa. I'm not sure no one would make things any easier. But in a way, the mystery around her has kept her alive. Not that that's good enough. Where you go, poor Elisa? Can we know?
Can we know?
Now we owe you, Elisa, a lesson we can learn. Take care of someone today. On we go.
All right, welcome, listeners. I'm your host, Noah Motorpearl, and thank you for listening in to the latest draft. I am here with the writers of The Ballad of Elisa Lam, the piece that we just listened to, Charlie Romano and Garrett Bell. How are you guys doing?
Hey,
Pretty good.
doing good. Yep.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you. Wow. So this piece was really, really striking. We don't have that many pieces on this show that are based off of real events, historical events, or particularly a particular moment in history. So our listeners, you've just listened to the Ballad of Elisa Lam, which is based on a real story. Not too long ago, I think it was 2013. A young woman, about 20 years old, was found in a water tank on top of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Yeah, this was a heavy listen. Not gonna lie. Can you both? You can tag team this, but do you mind providing our listeners a little bit of context for what the history behind the piece is?
Yeah. So the very the genesis of it all is that it came from the BMI musical theater workshop, where one of the assignments at the very end of your first year is to write a 10-minute musical, or closer to 15 in this particular situation. And it's kind of open to you from there. It's just like a free reign, write whatever it is that you want to be writing. And so when Charlie and I were discussing it, the idea of a 10-minute musical is really kind of absurd to me, just because when you look at song format and you look at the way a musical is structured, 10 minutes, 15 minutes even, just it feels contradictory to the actual art form. And so we were discussing what that meant for us, for whether or not we wanted to write a show that had 10-minute long songs in it, or if we wanted to have something that was a little bit more concrete, and we wanted an opportunity to flesh it out a little bit more. And so I got very interested in the idea of 15 minutes of fame. 15 minutes of fame stories. I think the first idea that I pitched to Charlie was the Miss America pageant with Miss South Carolina, I think
South
it was.
Carolina,
where she goes, yeah, when she goes completely up on her answer and she just kind of rambles for a bit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then she kind of became a 15-minute of fame internet sensation after that.
Mm.
And Charlie wasn't taken by that idea. But I really thought that was something that would really work in this form, that 15 minutes telling a 15-minute of fame story made a lot of sense to me intellectually.
Yeah.
And this was one that I came across, which is a really grotesque version of that very concept, because it's obviously very dark and it's really sad what happened, and the person's not here to experience their 15 minutes of fame. Which in turn is kind of the thing that we set out to investigate, is the people who sensationalize this person and the real life impact that it kind of has on you.
Oh no, I just remember when Garrett mentioned this idea to me, I was skeptical at first. I know, because it's it was so dark, and I was thinking, well, if we're trying to tell the story of this girl who died, it sounds like it might be a little too heavy to tackle in 15 minutes. But I think that, after thinking about it a lot and talking about the structure of the piece and what the concept was, it was I think in a way, like you were saying, it worked to our advantage, or to the advantage of the story, to use the format of what it means to be suddenly famous, or to be sensational, and what kind of stuff do we forget about when we are reading or listening or watching somebody who has become sensational, and how kind of dehumanized it's very easy to dehumanize people when watching them from a distance. And so that's kind of one of the major things we set out to tackle.
Can you both walk us through the process of adapting what is really just a few months and clips of history into a musical, because it's different than other adaptations, right? When you have perhaps a text or a well documented event to draw from, to draw scenes from, to draw songs from. But how did you go about deciding, okay, there's going to be this song about this thing in this moment?
I think a lot of that was just born out of the necessity of the shortness of time. Like there's such a short period of time that you have to introduce the story. Like an opening number has to introduce your story for you. And then it just became about us creating a story, because this is kind of what I liked about this piece and what I enjoyed about writing it was that it exists somewhere in between the world of real life and a completely conceptualized imaginative piece, where it pulls kind of from both of them. And so the plot, when you look at the show, there's the difference between the plot and the story. The plot is the king dies, the queen dies. The story is the king dies, the queen dies of a broken heart. And so trying to, because there's not much plot involved, it's just this, the through line of the story that we had to really locate for ourselves. And Charlie and I have been talking about this. I don't remember where the genesis of that idea was. I don't remember when we decided like we were going to make the balladeer her father, and we weren't going to let you know that until the end. It just was something that, like, as we were writing, I was like, I don't remember who said it, but it was like, her father's going to be this person, and there's going to be a sharp turn, and it's going to be very sad.
Yeah. I think I also don't remember exactly how it came about, but what I definitely will mention is we didn't want to like just set this like do a setting of what happened, right? So that's why the entirety of like the events of what actually happened are covered in the opening number, and then everything else is kind of like the aftermath and kind of the context and story behind it, or at least what an imagination thereof. And I think that part of the reason if I remember correctly, Garrett, we ended up going with that through line with the balladeer being her father was because we wanted to make sure we hit home emotionally what kind of impact this had, right? Like there's a real person who suffered a great, tragic death, and then in turn her entire family and base of friends also suffered. And to just kind of say what happened wouldn't be enough. There has to be some kind of reflection, and we especially want to give Elisa a voice and her family a voice. And that's so, we tried to do that with making the balladeer her father in this imaginative way, and then allowing Elisa to come back and sing an entire piece by herself.
Right. And ultimately, through the course of the piece, Elisa only exists as a memory, because very much in our real life, Elisa only exists as a memory at this point. And I think that was one of the things that we realized over time, especially after we had written the song Waitlist, that she was very much a memory, not a physical presence anymore. And so therefore it became very much her father's story, not her own, in fact.
Yeah, that's really poignant. I think your decision to give the voice to the humanity of the piece when what happened is, the media cycle took over, and the humanity kind of took a backseat to these speculations on who this girl was, without anyone actually asking the question of who was this person and what do they leave behind. So I think you guys did a great job of really filling in those gaps of the more human aspects of this moment.
Charlie constantly was bringing up as well was whether or not we were being sensitive enough to the actual people we were writing about. And especially with like the middle song, Suddenly Famous, when we were talking about it, and I think when I was first explaining what I was envisioning, making sure that we constantly redirected this so that as these three YouTubers came into the show, that we were never making fun of Elisa, that we were making fun of the YouTubers themselves, and just making sure that we always had that directed in the right emotional pivot.
Yeah, that's a delicate wire to balance, if that makes any sense. Yes. But but I think we were able to do a lot of conscious thinking and deliberation figure it out.
Going back to what you mentioned, Garrett, about that, about the song "Suddenly Famous," how did you choose these different YouTuber personas? Because they're three very distinct personalities. How did the two of you decide, oh yeah, these are the people, the type of people that we want to highlight or satirize?
They're kind of amalgams because those are like the three like series of what had happened to her: the like supernatural, the true crime, or the like um, mental health series that people had. And so we wanted them to kind of amalgam into those three different people. I know that was like one of the things, just for succinctness of storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. I basically, there's hundreds of videos. You have to find a way to summarize them. And I think, like Garrett said, that was probably the best way to find what the aggregate themes and theories that people were trying to peddle about, the tragic passing of Elisa.
Videos are so eerie. Charlie would send me so many of them, and I don't like being scared.
I watched a couple before this call for context, because I remember hearing about the story originally, but it fell into the back of my mind. But rereading your piece and listening in, I was like, oh, reminded of all the hysteria that was wrapped up in this one moment. Was something interesting that you brought up was how succinctly this piece was able to, it fits in the 5-act structure. You have your introduction, you have three distinct characters telling the story in 3 moments, and then the finale. Was there a lot of push and pull in finding that structure, or did it just come naturally to you?
I think that it was pretty natural. I think that
I think so.
Pretty well fell into itself. We completed the book before anything else. Like, we had a like bare bones book that we first wrote, so that we knew like where songs were going to go. And I think, and maybe it's just because it's how I work in general. I'm a big fan of 5-act structure, and I'm very sold on Aristotelian elements when it comes to writing. And so maybe it just like naturally popped in that capacity, because I definitely don't remember contemplating it very well. The title song, "The Ballad of Elisa Lam," has 2 reprises, and I think we even knew like right out of the get-go that it would.
And I think that sort of informed how it was written, right? Because I distinctly remember sitting down, and like Garrett and I briefly spoke about like what kind of theme we're going for, kind of going for like a ballady storyteller kind of thing. And so I decided to play this folksy thing on the piano, and I sort of played it right away. The main melody, and it was catchy and kind of, I don't want to say spooky, but like eerie is a good word. It was there was this tension in it, kind of, I guess, derived from the modalness of it, the Dorianness of it, and we knew it would be very effective in instantly capturing a feeling, kind of like a motif in a film score. And so we sort of used that to our advantage in placing it throughout the piece to keep it more cohesive. And I think that is kind of what made it feel like a real piece rather than, a few songs in a row.
Staying on the music for a second, Charlie, you summed it up pretty well. There was definitely, I could definitely sense picked up on the folk, the American folksy aspect of the genre. What lengths did you go to, or where did you find inspiration for the sound of this piece?
I'm a huge fan of Simon and Garfunkel. I don't know if I was necessarily thinking of them right away. I think one influence is probably that I think it's fair to say is probably Floyd Collins as a piece, and just like that musical soundscape. I love that piece, and I think Adam Ghetto does a good job of incorporating American folk sound in a contemporary musical theater way. So we were going for something similar, but not quite the same. And beyond that, I just kind of I have an idea of like I had an idea of what a balladeer would do. I guess maybe also kind of like the balladeer in Assassins plays the guitar usually often on stage, or at least I've seen that in some productions. what kind of thing would a balladeer sing by themselves to an entire audience that would be captivating enough for us to buy into it as the opening number. And so, yeah, I don't know if that really answers the question, but hopefully it's somewhat helpful.
Definitely. Well, I think inspiration comes in all forms. It comes in the music that you love to listen to, and that helps. You pick up things here and there, and then you infuse it with your own story, and you find
Yeah.
what it is.
And I'd also say it's really in situations like this, I really think it's, I don't know if it's all about melody, but it's really, melody is probably the most, arguably the most important, because that's what people are going to latch onto, and that is what is going to carry a listener through, kind of not necessarily hold their hand, but guide them through the storytelling. And so, there's a great tradition of melodists and melody in American folk music. And so that's another place that I was kind of tapping into while thinking about how to go about writing it.
There's also the unique benefit that Charlie is extraordinarily gifted at writing beautiful melodies.
I bet that helps.
Oh, thank you. I suppose.
Switching gears a little bit. This piece, was it always intended to be an audio only piece, or was it originally intended for the stage?
For the stage. Like, the short answer is for the stage. That we very much envisioned it like, how will this work on stage? I know for me, I can't speak for Charlie, but for me, that's just how my mind thinks. I'm very theatrically, like, stage oriented in how I envision my writing. And so that was always an aspect of it. This was being written during the pandemic, though. And so it naturally kind of guided it in a very specific direction for how we actually put the whole thing together. Because people were not, including Charlie and I, were not capable of being in the same room as one another while we were doing it, or ever like truly mounting it in that capacity either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see it on stage.
Yeah, same. And I totally, in writing this and thinking about what captivates an audience, because it's my favorite thing about theater is that it's live and in person. That is why I've chosen to be a music theater composer, not a film composer, because I want people to hear it in person, because there's nothing, it's hard to put a finger on it, but there's nothing quite like it. And so I definitely had that in mind. But then with the shutdown happening, I was in my room writing this by myself, and there was a little bit of liberty, freedom, because in BMI previously, at least, you're kind of limited by the performers you have on hand. But I was suddenly able to perform 10 parts, at once. I was playing guitar, clapping and singing, multiple harmony parts. And so that really helped bring it to, as much fruition as possible. And so that's why I did, it's kind of semi-orchestrated in a way, which I think we still probably would have been able to do. I still would have had the thought to do it if we were during BMI. I mean, if we were in person, but I'm not sure if it would have been as easily, I don't know, not if it maybe wouldn't have been as acceptable. Also because I didn't notate any of the sheet music until after all of the songs were written, right? I recorded all of it and just played by memory, and just because notating is I can often be the bane of a composer's existence. So anyways, I definitely I felt like kind of a liberation of okay, I can just do everything that's in my head. I'm going to be able to do. And sometimes when you're in BMI or a workshop like that, you have to keep those things in your head, because you're not going to have all the performers readily available. You won't be able to have 5 singers on your piece, and you just have to kind of remember or make a note of what this would sound like in its in its full form, and being able to do it and have, I guess, the basic skills of logic to do that were very, very helpful. So.
And also imagining it the way that we did as this audio recording, we had the luxury of the extraordinary talents of Laura Data, who sings so beautifully as Elisa Lam, Kevin Story as our magnificent balladeer, as well as Dan Wilson and Claire Francis, who performed for us on that.
And Julian Bliss,
and Julian Bliss hitting our lowest notes.
Yeah,
it's really giving beautiful life. One of the songs that Charlie and I was the most happy with is the song Waitlist that Elisa sings at the very end of the show. And Laura Dadup is a performer that we knew, and so when we had this piece that felt quite special to both of us, we were trying to figure out who we were going to get to sing it, and she was somebody I was able to call up and ask to do. And at like 10 a.m. one morning, she recorded it in like one take and sent us that. And we were just like, you literally just brought this to life. Like as a writer, like the luxury of seeing somebody like truly bring something of yours to life is second to none. And so that was a huge benefit of producing it as an audio recording, as this is.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we were able to recruit talent from all sorts of, corners of New York City and beyond.
So it sounds like while obviously shutdowns are difficult and it's hard for everyone, you were able to find new avenues for creativity and reach out to people and connect with people who you may not have had the opportunity to while creating this piece. How did you go about creating this piece in isolation? Because obviously there's not the same back and forth that you get in person, where you are on Zoom calls, 3 times a week at the same time. How did you what are the actions that you took to bring this to life while being completely separated from one another?
I think that it was always very last minute. I'm not a particularly organized person, and so it was mostly like, Charlie, can you meet in 10 minutes? But also, Charlie was a wonderful composer to work with as a lyricist, because he would come up with like these melody lines and he would send them to me, and he would be like, what are your thoughts on this? And so like the example of the song Weightless, he had like the first musical phrase up into the word weightless. And I sat with it for like an hour, and I sent him the first lyric for it. And then he took that and he like evolved off of it. And then he started going to next thing. And then as he was doing it, I typed up the like B section that came immediately after that. And I was like, I think this is the lyric turn that it's going to have coming up. And he was like, let me work on that. And like the next day he would send me something. It was very piecemeal, but it felt organic all the same.
Yeah. That piece especially, I think, that song, we kind of built it back with a ton of back and forth. That was, I don't know, I mean, I guess this isn't very helpful. People want to like, if they're trying to listen for like learn how to write a song or whatever, but like it flowed out in every time I would write something. I guess Garrett would get what's the word I'm looking for? Stumbling over words, inspired. And then he would continue writing another lyric that was inspired, that was like further inspiration point he had just written. And then I would be inspired for more music. And obviously it's I don't know, it kind of built off itself in that way.
Yeah, and the benefit is that we were wanting to write the same thing. We had done the homework of establishing what the song was going to accomplish, what we wanted this character to accomplish, what the emotion was, what the song sounded like. We had all of that pre-established before we started. I think it took us like a day to write it. We did it very quickly. I like to think of it as like the non-active writing part of writing.
Yeah.
We didn't skip that step.
Before jumping onto the keys, maybe this sounds a little dramatic. I kind of try to write it in my head first. Like I have an idea of what I'm going to write, and then I realize it on the piano. And then maybe what I thought I wanted ends up not being what I wanted. And then I start changing it. And that's where a lot of the composing happens.
Now I want to wrap up here with a couple more questions. What advice, having written in this pandemic and been writing for a while, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to create musical theater right now, with these lockdowns still going on and still the challenge of not being able to see your piece on a stage right now?
I'll say my biggest piece of advice right away is just do it. I don't know if that might be helpful for some or completely unhelpful for others, but if you want to write something and you have the time, then there shouldn't be too much else holding you back, because it's not, writing is already a pretty solitary experience, save maybe if you're writing with one collaborator, but we are blessed with Zoom and FaceTime and, high speed internet. We can connect with people, rather instantaneously. And so writing was always going to be solitary, and now we all are kind of confined to solitude. So it's almost like no better time to write. I don't know, Gary, what do you think?
I agree with like write it and write it when you can. I mean,
Mhm.
we all have to be kind to ourselves right now. And I have certain days where I sit down and I'm like, I have a song in me. It is going to come. And then like Monday was a day this week where I was just like, I spent an entire day setting up my workstation, like literally 8 hours of setting up my workstation. And I think that I wrote my name. Like that's all I accomplished on that day.
Yeah.
But it's also enough. I'd say the only like, because I don't really believe in silver lining things like this, but the positive of right now is that there is a wealth of artists out there who are not otherwise occupied. And so the theater community is a small community. If you have people within it, it's a great opportunity to see how you're able to collaborate, who you're able to work with, and what you're able to put together.
Hmm.
I always give our guests an opportunity to talk about any future work that they're working on, and then also if you have a website or a social media account where people can follow you and listen to more of your work.
Cool. Well, like a lot of artists right now, I'm just writing a lot of stuff that like trying to get it produced is very challenging because there's not a lot of places to produce it. We've got about a year of backlog to get through as well. I have a play that I've written. It's called In Comédie Française. That is one of like the next ones that's going to be going down, which is a comedic satire on the fall of Louis XVI, done in a very contemporary way, a show about the rise and fall of governments. And then the next show, which has been occupying a lot of my quarantine, is a musical called The Lost Boys, which is a musical I've been writing, which is about my generation of gay men who grew up without any real role models. So men in their 30s who, like myself, turn and look at what is next in my chapter of life and recognize that they're not really there because we lost a lot of them in the 1980s. So those are the main pieces that I'm working on that are going to be coming down the pipeline for people to look out for. I think they're very good.
I can't wait. Do you have a website that we can find them or find?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
www.garretthebell.com.
Great. Thank you so much. And Charlie, what do you have going on?
Yeah, I have a couple of shows. One, we were about to get workshopped in the city before the pandemic, and it's been kind of on pause, which is Call Me from the Grave. It's a show about tells the life and legend and the story of Robert Johnson, who was a black blues musician from the Mississippi Delta, who allegedly sold his soul to the devil in exchange for musical prowess. He was a real person, died at the age of 27, the OG member, you could say, of the 27 Club in America. But more importantly, or rather importantly as well, he died sort of in obscurity, but his music was rediscovered in the 60s and became sort of the bedrock of blues and rock and roll in America. It was like extremely influential, but a lot of people don't know about him. So I have a show about him that is hopefully when things open up, we'll get produced again or workshopped again. And but during the pandemic, we have finished recording an original cast album of the original cast members from Yale, and that album should be coming out very soon. On iTunes, Spotify, or Apple Music, or whatever. And you can also hear snippets of it at callmefromthegrave.com. And another show I have is called Onward and Upward, which is an adaptation of a play called Up the Man in a Flying Chair by Bridget Carpenter, which tells the story of a man named Larry Walters, who one day in the mid 80s attached 42 weather balloons to a lawn chair and went flying up 16,000 feet in the sky. And
Oh my
the
God.
show, the show talks about him. It's kind of an reimagined version of his life, where he's an inventor, and he kind of has a lot of familiar struggles and some like psychological struggles as well. But it kind of tells his adventure and story. And so we actually were able to workshop that show despite the pandemic, because there's only a 6-person cast. And we got everybody COVID tested and we quarantined together and did a small workshop in the basement of a church outside Chicago. So,
Wow.
sometimes if there's a will, there's a way. So we were able to figure that one out. But you can learn more about both of those shows at my personal website as well, which is charlieromano.com. Charlie with an IE and it's Romano.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
you
it's
so
great,
much.
great to
Thank
be here.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The Latest Draft. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Latest Draft for updates, writing tips, and more. Join us next week for our season finale cabaret. Now go start creating.